They came through the sky, not with weapons, but with trembling voices and outstretched hands. Their ships hovered like silver scars over Earth's upper atmosphere, sending desperate transmissions in broken common galactic. Their words were soaked in fear, their faces barely able to hide the terror of extinction. The Torellan Empire, once proud and vast, was burning, overrun by something they called the Gorgax swarm. The Galactic Council refused to help. Too far, too dangerous, too many unknowns. Earth was their last hope. The message reached Earth's unified command just past midnight. The brass assembled, generals, strategists, analysts. None of them blinked. They watched the live feed. A high priest of the Trellin kneeling in his own blood on the steps of his planetary council, eyes wide, speaking the final plea before the swarm reached him. Help us. Please, send your warriors. We need Earth's Deathworlders. Everyone knew the term. It wasn't flattery. It wasn't even respect. It was fear. Earned, justified fear. Earth wasn't like the other planets. Gravity too strong, atmosphere too volatile, predators too brutal, wars too frequent. Mankind evolved not in harmony, but in combat. Every culture, every generation sharpened its people on violence, struggle, betrayal. Survival wasn't a right. It was a conquest. The Deathworlders were a project born from desperation and madness. Volunteers, or what passed for them. Men who had nothing to live for and everything to kill for. Most were ex-soldiers, criminals, forgotten ghosts of old wars, reforged with tech and trauma. At Fort Tempest, deep beneath the Siberian permafrost, the call came in. Commander Reese was the first to read it. He didn't speak. He just stared at the screen and cracked his knuckles. Around him, his squad, the last standing unit from the Icarus Wars, sat in silence. "They want help?" one of them grunted. "From us?" Reese nodded once. "They're not getting help. They're getting judgment." Each of the Deathworlders had scars that ran deeper than flesh. Marcus, the demolitions expert who hadn't smiled since his family was burned alive during the Martian riots. Colton, the sniper with tremors in his hands but still able to split a hair at 1,000 yards. And Reese himself, a man who buried his conscience somewhere under layers of synthetic muscle and liquored memories. They didn't wear capes. They wore body armor laced with scavenged alien tech and brutality. They didn't pray, they fought. And if the Torellan thought Earth would send angels, they hadn't paid attention to history. The Torellan transport ship shuddered when the Deathworlders stepped aboard. Even the AI voice stuttered in greeting. The alien delegation tried to welcome them formally, but none of the humans responded. Reese walked to the edge of the platform, looked out over the stars, and finally spoke. "You called us. Don't expect to control us." Their first destination was Valthor 9, a scorched colony planet where Torellan refugees had fled from the swarm, or so they claimed. The Deathworlders weren't so easily fooled. From orbit, the heat signatures told a different story, something darker, something waiting. Reese's gut twisted. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It never was. Boots hit dirt. The Deathworlders moved like shadows through ash and ruin. Colton scanned the area. "This place ain't overrun," he muttered. "It's bait." "Then let's bite back," Reese growled. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to send a message, not just to the swarm, but to every race that watched from their safe distance. Earth didn't send heroes. Earth sent consequences. The air on Valthor 9 reeked of ash and deceit. The Deathworlders moved in a diamond formation, each man synced through neural links and centuries-old muscle memory. Dust swirled around their boots, disturbed only by their heavy steps, and the occasional whisper of wind carrying the scent of charred metal. This was no battlefield. It was a setup. Too quiet. Too clean. And Rhys hated clean. War was never clean. Colton scanned the perimeter with his modified scope, eyes narrowed. No swarm corpses, no signs of struggle, just nothing. Rhys didn't answer. He was listening, not with ears, but instinct. He'd felt it before, back on Europa during the Black Siege. The feeling right before everything goes to hell, a static in the bones, a silence that wasn't peaceful, just tense. Like the planet was holding its breath. Marcus crouched beside what used to be a control station. Its panels were intact, unscorched. Whoever left didn't leave in a hurry. System logs are clean, no breach alerts, no swarm activity. If they ran, it wasn't from outside. Rhys ran a hand across the dusty panel. Maybe they didn't run at all. The squad moved deeper into the colony's interior, passing intact homes with lights still flickering, food still on tables. A child's toy blinked beneath a bench. Power still running. That was the worst sign of all. Refugees don't leave mid-meal. Families don't abandon kids' toys without a fight. Then came the smell. Not rot, not death. Something worse. Sterility, artificial antiseptic, used to cover something foul. Colton gagged slightly, pulling a filter over his nose. This ain't right, Rhys. This ain't no overrun colony. This is a goddamn morgue. They found the first bodies beneath the medical dome, laid out in rows, perfect rows, as if posed. Not a mark on them. No wounds, no signs of swarm infestation. But their eyes were open, frozen in terror. Children. Women. Old Torellan priests. All dead, and not recently. Days, maybe weeks. Marcus swallowed hard. They weren't killed. They were preserved, like samples. Rhys knelt beside one. The skin felt cold, rubbery, not decay. Freezing tech had been used, probably military-grade cryonics. Why would you freeze a dead population unless you wanted to show it to someone? Colton tensed, his voice barely a whisper. A message? Rhys stood up slowly. A lie. They weren't here for rescue. They were here to be filmed. And sure enough, they found the cameras, hidden within light fixtures, behind environmental controls, embedded in the damn trees. Alien tech, spliced with human design. Not Torellan. Rhys ripped one from the wall and crushed it in his palm. They staged it, brought us here to perform. For who? Marcus asked. But they all knew the answer. The Galactic Council. The Deathworlders had a reputation. A dark one. The kind of reputation that made the other species lock their doors and hide their diplomats. Earth wasn't a part of the Council, not officially. Too unstable, they'd said. Too aggressive. Too human. But the Council watched. Always watched. Rhys growled, low and bitter. They wanted footage. Proof. That humans are monsters. That we don't belong. So they baited us with a fake swarm attack? Colton spat. Used their own dead as props? Marcus checked a panel. Not all dead. Some of these chambers are still active. Life signs, faint, deep underground. Show me, Rhys snapped. They followed the readings to an underground lab, heavily reinforced, hidden beneath layers of false rock and automated defenses. It took them 3 hours to break in, during which 2 drones nearly killed Marcus and Colton lost a chunk of shoulder armor. Inside, they found the truth. Test subjects. Dozens of them. Human, alien, hybrid. Strapped to slabs. IVs dripping strange blue liquid into their veins. Brainwaves barely active. They weren't dead, but they weren't alive either. Marcus stepped back, horror twisting his face. This is an experimentation site. Reese read the alien logs, translating them line by line. Tyrellan Military Initiative. Goal: weaponization of Deathworlder DNA. Use exposure to swarm pheromones to create adaptive warriors. They were trying to clone us, Colton whispered. No, Reese said coldly. They were trying to build something worse. He scrolled through the final log, dated just a week ago. Test 438. A shows accelerated aggression when exposed to Gorgax stimuli. Subject eliminated 3 handlers. Recommend sterilization protocol. Colton pointed to one of the slabs. That's not a clone. That's a man. Reese leaned over, staring into the slack face of a human male. Eyes sunken, skin pale. Scarred arms twitched beneath restraints. His dog tags read, Harris, A. 248th Infantry, missing in action 5 years ago. They weren't clones. They were abductees. Soldiers lost in old battles, believed dead, taken by Tyrellan black projects and experimented on. Rage boiled in Reese's chest like molten iron. They didn't just lie to us. They used us, hunted us, turned our brothers into lab rats. Marcus shook with fury. We came to help. They turned it into a show. They think we're animals, Colton muttered. And now they're going to learn what kind of animal they invited to dinner. Reese activated his comlink. Base Command. This is Commander Reese, Deathworlder Unit Omega-1. The mission is compromised. Request immediate orbital blackout. Tactical nuke on my coordinates. The reply came after a long pause. Affirmative, Commander. 15-minute countdown. Evac recommended. Reese looked at the bodies strapped to slabs. The ones who weren't dead yet. The ones who never had a chance to choose. He walked over to the control panel and started shutting off life support, one line at a time. Colton stared. We're killing them? They're already gone, Reese replied flatly. We're just making it clean. He reached Harris's slab, paused. If you can still hear me, brother, I'm sorry. He cut the power. They set explosives at key points throughout the lab. Marcus handed Reese the detonator, fingers shaking. They're going to call us monsters for this. They called us that before we ever picked up a gun, Reese said. They didn't run. They walked. Calmly. Silently. Out of the lab and toward the extraction point. As they rose into orbit, the colony burned. Not just from the nukes, but from the files Reese had leaked seconds before detonation. Every log, every experiment, every body. The truth, broadcast across 50 worlds. Let them call Earth savage. Let them fear the Deathworlders. Because after today, they'd remember why. The fallout hit faster than anyone expected. Within hours of the Valthor 9 broadcast, half the Galactic Council was in chaos. Emergency meetings were called. Communications buzzed across the stars in a panic. The footage Reese leaked. Test subjects, hybrid corpses, alien scientists laughing over restrained human soldiers, hit like a thunderclap. Tyrellan spokespeople scrambled to contain the narrative, calling it a rogue operation and unauthorized black research. But it was too late. The Deathworlders hadn't just exposed a single lab. They'd ripped open the facade the entire council had been hiding behind for decades. Earth had long suspected its outcast status wasn't about instability. It was fear. Fear of what humans were becoming. And now, that fear was out in the open. On Earth, reactions were split. Government officials praised the Deathworlders as patriots. News outlets ran with headlines like The Slaughter on Valthor 9 and Earth's Reckoning. But behind closed doors, the unified command was seething. Reese stood in the cold, metallic debriefing chamber at Fort Tempest, flanked by Colton and Marcus, facing a panel of grim-faced brass and political operatives. Admiral Denton, an aging warhawk with a smile like a guillotine, leaned forward. "You disobeyed direct orders, Commander," Denton said. "We told you to secure the colony, not torch it." Reese didn't flinch. There was nothing to secure. The colony was a goddamn morgue. Denton's jaw tightened. "And broadcasting classified footage without clearance?" "That wasn't footage," Reese said. "That was the truth." One of the politicians, a sleek, gray-eyed bureaucrat named Levin, spoke next. "You've started a galactic incident. The Terrellan ambassador is threatening sanctions. Trade routes are being frozen. Do you know what that means?" "It means they're scared," Reese said. "And they should be." Levin stood, slamming his datapad onto the table. "You embarrassed Earth. You painted us as butchers." "We didn't paint anything," Marcus cut in, voice low and full of restrained fury. "They did that when they strapped our people to lab tables and turned them into puppets." Colton added, "You want us to apologize for showing what they did? Then maybe you're in the wrong room." The panel went silent. Denton finally exhaled. "The Council is demanding an inquiry. They want the Deathworlders grounded." Reese stepped forward. "You do that, you lose your only weapon. The swarm's still out there. You think they care about politics? We're the only ones who've ever survived a full-scale swarm assault. And we just proved we're willing to cross lines the rest of the galaxy won't." Levin sneered. "You want to be feared." Reese smiled. "We are feared." The panel ended with no verdict, just veiled threats and heavy silence. Outside, the base was buzzing with tension. Deathworlders weren't just soldiers now. They were symbols, icons, or monsters, depending on who you asked. They walked in silence to the barracks. Colton lit a smoke and stared at the sky. "They're gonna hang us eventually, you know, for what we did." "They'll try," Marcus said, "but they need us too much." Reese didn't respond. He was thinking about the face of that soldier, Harris, about how many more like him were still out there, experimented on, forgotten. Later that night, a private transmission broke through their secured line. No ID tag, encrypted 10 layers deep. Reese opened it. A voice came through, raspy, mechanical, but unmistakably human. "I saw what you did on Valor 9. You're not alone." The screen flickered and revealed coordinates. Deep space, uncharted. The signal vanished. Reese stared at the blank screen. That voice. That was Foster. Marcus looked up, stunned. "Foster's dead. Swarm ate his entire squad on Tau Ceti." "Or that's what we were told," Reese muttered. "Maybe Valor 9 wasn't the only lab." Colton crushed his cigarette. "If there's more of us out there—" "We find them," Reese said. "All of them." They launched the next day. No approval, no orders, just coordinates and fury. As their ship tore through the edge of known space, Reese reviewed the last clean data feed from the Valor 9 system. One thing had been bothering him. The swarm. There had been no swarm on the planet, not even a pheromone trail. That kind of absence didn't make sense. The Gorgax swarm wasn't just a mindless plague. It was a strategic terror. It hunted, it chased, and when it devoured, it left signs. But Valor 9 had nothing. Reese dug deeper. Cross-referenced older swarm activity. Looked at recent absences. Patterns emerged, not random. "Colton," he called. "Bring up swarm disappearance records. The ones the Council classified." Colton raised a brow. "That'll trigger a security tripwire." "Trigger it," Reese said. They broke through the archive wall in minutes. The data flooded the screen and chilled the room to ice. The swarm hadn't vanished. It had been diverted, herded, like cattle. Marcus leaned in, face pale. Someone's been controlling the swarm. Or directing it, Colton whispered. The implications were sickening. The swarm, the galactic threat that justified the Council's emergency powers, its militarization, its oversight of unfit species like humanity. It wasn't a threat at all. It was a tool. Reese clenched his fists. They needed a reason to keep us on a leash, so they created one. Marcus nodded slowly. And now that the leash is breaking, they're panicking. The coordinates they were headed to weren't just a random location. They were a relay point, a meeting ground. And someone who had survived the swarm, someone like Foster, was trying to show them the bigger picture. Hours later, they reached a derelict station orbiting a dead moon. Lights flickering. No heat signature. Colton landed the ship in near silence. They entered cautiously. Inside, they found a nightmare. Walls lined with bodies in cryo-suspension. All human, all labeled with missing military tags. Men from wars long buried by governments and cover-ups. And then they found him. Foster. Alive, scarred, wired into the station's mainframe, his body half machine, kept alive by hate and broken tech. His eyes fluttered open as they entered. I waited, he croaked. Knew you'd come? Reese knelt beside him. How long? Foster coughed blood. 6 years. They took me, used me to calibrate the swarm's aggression. Tyrell Tech, council funding, we're the control group. You're saying the swarm, Marcus began. They trained it on us, Foster said, to test fear, loyalty, reactions of other species. We were always the experiment. Colton's face twisted with fury. They used the swarm as propaganda. Foster nodded. And when Earth got too loud, too proud, they planned to unleash the swarm on us next. Blame it on another outbreak. Clean slate. Reese stood, every inch of him trembling with a rage he could barely contain. This ends now, he said. He turned to his men. We're not just fighting the swarm anymore. We're burning down the whole rotten empire that let it live. The inside of the derelict station groaned like a dying beast. Pipes hissed steam through fractured joints, and exposed wires sparked against cracked alloy walls. It felt less like a facility, and more like a tomb. But inside that tomb, Foster had built something more dangerous than the swarm itself. Knowledge. They spent the first hours securing the site. Colton set up motion-triggered mines and signal scramblers around the perimeter, while Marcus dug through every active terminal. Reese stayed with Foster in the core chamber, watching the man who should have been dead explain how the galaxy had been built on betrayal. They didn't just create the swarm, Foster said, voice barely human now, filtered through cracked audio ports in his throat. They bred it in cycles, let it devour weak colonies, or strong ones that refused council compliance, always under the guise of outbreak or containment failure. Reese's jaw clenched. And Earth? Foster looked at him with hollow eyes. Next in line, they already mapped the cities, simulated the infection rate. They wanted to show the galaxy what happens when you let Deathworlders get too powerful. And the Tyrellan? Marcus asked, standing at the door. Pawns, Foster said. They didn't know they were being used either. They thought they were leading a containment alliance. In truth, they were just the cleanup crew. Colton leaned against the console. You said the swarm could be controlled. How? Foster nodded weakly. Neural beacon tech, tied to a master signal relay, buried deep in uncharted space. I hacked fragments of its frequency before they dumped me here. They think I'm dead, And that's our only advantage. Reese stepped forward. You want us to take control of the swarm? Foster gave a slow, grim smile. You want justice? You want them to fear Earth? Then take what they fear the most and turn it back on them. Reese looked to Colton and Marcus. Neither spoke, but their eyes said everything. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was war, not against the swarm, but the architects of fear. Give us the coordinates, Reese said. Foster transferred the data to their ship's core. As the upload began, he slumped deeper into his cradle. I won't make it, he said, but that's not the point. You've seen the truth. You've lived it. They thought they could bury us in labs and silence. They forgot who they were dealing with, Reese replied. You're not just Deathworlders anymore, Foster whispered. You're the plague that eats the plague. He died with a faint smile, the systems around him dimming with his heartbeat. They didn't bury him. There wasn't time. Instead, they uploaded his consciousness fragment into the ship's AI core. He'd ride with them, even in death. The coordinates led them beyond known sectors, past the boundaries of charted space. They flew for 3 days in silence, save for the hum of engines and the occasional encrypted signal flare from Unified Command trying to locate them. They didn't respond. On the 4th day, they reached the relay. It wasn't a structure. It was a monolith, the size of a small moon built from obsidian black alloys, floating in the vacuum like a wound in space itself. Every sensor lit up red the moment they got close. Marcus stared at the readouts. This thing's alive. It's organic tech, Reese said, built with the same material as the swarm hives. It's not just controlling them, it is them. Foster's echo voice came from the console. They call it the cradle, core node for the swarm's behavioral sync. Destroy it, the swarm goes wild. Seize it, and you become God. Colton whistled. That's a hell of a gamble. War always is, Reese said. They landed on a ridge near one of the relay's ports, an access point pulsing with greenish light and covered in hive-like tendrils. Their boots stuck to the surface slightly as they disembarked, the material semi-organic underfoot. Inside, the structure pulsed with a dull, wet heartbeat. Every corridor oozed warmth and something like breath. The walls weren't metal, they were flesh tech, reactive, twitching, watching. Colton muttered, This whole place feels like walking through a corpse. They moved fast, breaching 3 layers of internal defense systems that seemed less mechanical and more instinctive. Creatures rose from the walls, not the swarm soldiers, but biohybrids, fast and silent. They dropped 2 of them before the rest fled. Marcus accessed a mainframe shaped like a rib cage. Foster's right, he said. We can rewire this. Not permanently, but enough to shift control to our signal for a window. How long? Reese asked. 10 minutes, maybe 15. They set up defensive formations. Reese stood by the main chamber doors, pulse rifle at the ready. That's when it began. The swarm came. Not thousands. Millions. Ships, creatures, organic fighters moving as one mind. They knew. Somehow they knew their cradle was under siege. The outer hull trembled with the pressure of approaching forces. But inside, Reese didn't flinch. Colton, Marcus, hold that link. We buy time. The first breach came at the port shaft. Creatures poured through like bile through a cut vein. Colton fired 3 perfect shots, each to the head, each dropping a nightmare. Marcus triggered a charge that collapsed the shaft, buying them precious seconds. Sweat drenched their armor. Blood slicked the floor. But the console lights turned green. Foster's algorithm was sinking. 5%, Marcus gasped. We're in. Another wave hit them, This time smarter. Tactical formations. These weren't wild beasts. These were soldiers, engineered to adapt. Colton was knocked to the floor, his shoulder armor torn through. Reese dragged him back, fired point blank into a swarmling's jaw. "Get up, Colton!" "Not dying here," Colton grunted, pulling himself up, blood running down his arm. 10 minutes, 15, 20. They held. The moment it hit 100%, the swarm stopped. Dead stop. Every creature, every drone, mid-motion, eyes glowing. The cradle responded. And for the first time in its existence, it listened to a human command. Reese stood in the center of the chamber, voice calm but loaded with fury. "You've been slaves, tools, murderers used for political leverage." The swarm trembled. "No more." He transmitted the new protocol, freedom, rewritten in pain and blood. The swarm didn't bow. It saluted. Outside, in every sector of known space, the swarm stopped attacking. Ships halted mid-assault. Hives paused. The death toll across the stars froze. And then came the backlash. Council channels lit up with panic. Entire sectors went dark, either fleeing or preparing for retaliation. Some declared Earth a rogue threat. Others begged for talks. Reese stared into the stars, eyes burning. "They made us outlaws," he said. "Let's show them what outlaw justice looks like." The return to Earth was anything but triumphant. They didn't arrive in parades or banners. No medals waited. No bands played. What met them instead was silence. Tense, uneasy silence. As the dropship broke through the upper atmosphere, Unified Command dispatched a single message. "Return to Fort Tempest, immediately. Disarm and prepare for containment." Reese chuckled bitterly as the words lit up the ship's main console. "They're scared." "Of us?" Colton asked, his arm still strapped with medical gauze. "Of what we've become," Reese said. The landing pad at Fort Tempest was crawling with soldiers. Armored, locked, formation tight. Reese recognized the stance. It wasn't defense. It was containment. They weren't there to welcome them. They were there to put them in a cage. General Allard, a stiff-backed career man who had never once seen real combat, stepped forward as the Deathworlders disembarked. "By order of Unified Command," Allard announced, "you are hereby relieved of duty pending full investigation into unauthorized galactic interference, hostile force commandeering, and high-level insubordination." Reese stepped forward. No salute, no acknowledgement, just steel in his voice. "We stopped the swarm. We exposed the Council's lies. And you want to contain us?" Allard didn't blink. "Your methods were extreme. And effective." Marcus added, "You should be thanking us, not reading off charges." "This isn't about gratitude," Allard snapped. "It's about control. You've made Earth a target. You've given hostile species every excuse to declare war." "No," Reese said coldly. "We've given them a reason to think twice." Tension hung in the air like a drawn bowstring. For a moment, the entire base stood on the edge of civil war. But then Colton stepped forward, ripped off his insignia patch, and dropped it on the ground. "We don't fight for command anymore." Marcus followed. Then Reese. They turned and walked off the landing pad. No one dared stop them. That night, news of their return went viral. The footage from the cradle, the synchronized stop of the swarm, the image of Deathworlders standing in the heart of what every race feared most, and commanding it. Every channel lit up with fear, awe, or hatred. Some called them tyrants, others saviors. Most just whispered a new name across the stars: the lords of the swarm. Earth's population was divided. Civilians praised them. Protesters chanted in the streets, "Let them lead." Political elites begged for distancing statements. Corporations moved resources off-planet. But in the shadows, something else was brewing. They weren't the only ones betrayed by the Council. Within a week, encrypted signals began reaching them, from rebel colonies, outlaw species, fringe mercenaries, the broken, the used, the cast aside. They all shared one thing: hate for the system that fed off them. At an abandoned mining colony on Europa, Reese convened the first gathering. It was rough, unsanctioned, and crawling with danger. Ex-soldiers from the Cravari Wars, technicians exiled from Arcos Prime, pirate warlords, even a defector from the Torellan military, face scarred, voice bitter. One by one, they stood and spoke, not in unity, but in rage. We were cannon fodder. They took our sons for experiments. They bombed our homes for peace treaties. Reese listened. Then he stepped into the center. They lied to you, to all of us, told us the swarm was a plague, told you Earth was unstable, told you we were the monsters. He paused. And maybe we are. Silence. But monsters don't beg for freedom. We take it. He held up a data pad, projecting live feed from the cradle. The swarm, still dormant, still obedient to Earth's command. A god sleeping in a box. This isn't just revenge. This is revolution. The galaxy tried to crush us under order. Let's answer with chaos. Some hesitated. Most didn't. The first alliance was forged that night, not with treaties or flags, but with blood and defiance. A new force was born, not Earth's army, not the Council's dogs, just a name: the Black Line. Deathworlders led it, broken empires fueled it, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks later, the Council struck. A peacekeeping fleet comprised of over 200 ships entered Earth's orbit. Officially, it was a diplomatic mission. Unofficially, it was a threat. Led by High Executor Varen of the Kex Dominion, a cold-blooded bureaucrat known for his strategic exterminations. His message was clear: surrender command of the swarm, dissolve the Deathworlder program, or Earth will be cleansed. Reese stood in the control room of Black Line Command, now operating out of a mobile asteroid fortress dubbed Gravehold. He didn't flinch. "They want the swarm back," Marcus said. "Like it's theirs." "They never owned it," Colton muttered. "They just unleashed it on everyone else." Reese tapped the console. Brought up the cradle interface. Foster's echo voice murmured in the background. "They want fear?" Reese said. "Give them terror." He didn't launch an attack. He did something worse. He opened the swarm's archives. Every tactical log, every council-approved directive to target civilians, every slaughter sanctioned under the name of containment, every planet wiped out for refusing to pay galactic taxes, every experiment run on abducted humans and aliens, leaked. Within hours, 20 civilizations were in rebellion. Council stations burned. Fleet admirals defected. Ambassadors were dragged from podiums and thrown from high towers. And still, Earth said nothing. Reese didn't gloat. He just watched. Because this wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about reckoning. And it had only just begun. The galaxy burned. Reese watched the stars flicker through the reinforced viewport of Gravehold's command bridge, each pulse of light a signal from a new uprising. The Deathworlders hadn't just turned the tables. They'd flipped them, shattered the legs, and set the room on fire. Planetary systems once too afraid to speak out now flew pirate banners, declared independence, and broadcast their defiance into the void. Swarm hives had become sentinels, guarding liberated colonies under Earth's command. But victory, Reese knew, was a short breath before the next punch. And the next punch came harder than anyone expected. It started with silence. An entire system, Valari Quadrant, population 6 billion, went dark. No signal, no ships, no debris. Just gone. Black. Then came the whispers. Not of war fleets or council sanctions, but of something ancient, something buried. Foster's AI fragment was the first to confirm the anomaly. Gravehold, we've intercepted signal decay from Valari. Not natural, not weapon-based. Pattern matches no known species. Unknown quantum footprint. Reese frowned. What does that mean? It means something's hunting, Marcus said grimly, reading the spectral data. And it's not the swarm. Colton stared at the heat map. Whatever hit Valari didn't attack. It erased. Before Reese could respond, Gravehold's long-range sensors lit up like a star going supernova. 5 more systems. Erased. No traces, no heat signatures. Just silence. Is it the Council? Marcus asked, even though he already knew the answer. No, Reese muttered. The Council wants control. This is something else. Something that doesn't care who wins. Foster's voice returned, distorted and hollow. I've found it. Deep archives. The Council had another fail-safe, a final solution in case the swarm turned. On the main screen, a name appeared. Project Eclipse. Reese leaned in. Show me. The feed shifted, grainy footage from an old Council facility. Alien scientists speaking in low, terrified tones. In the background, a black structure pulsed, shifting in and out of visibility like it was half-phased out of reality. Not built, Foster said. Discovered. Deep beneath the 4th moon of Yoran 5. A remnant. Older than the Council. Older than the swarm. Colton narrowed his eyes. You're saying this isn't Council tech? It's worse. It's pre-galactic. They found it, studied it, and then caged it. Marcus glanced at Reese. And now they've let it loose. On screen, the final frame was a Council log. If the Deathworlders cannot be stopped, activate the Dark Sun. They hadn't just unleashed a weapon, they'd unleashed a thing, something so old and powerful that even the swarm, engineered to fear nothing, had no behavioral protocol for it. Foster's analysis showed one terrifying fact. Every swarm node near an eclipse zone had fled. Not fought. Fled. Reese looked at his team. This isn't war anymore, he said. It's survival. They moved quickly. Gravehold detached from orbit, and the Deathworlders began mass mobilization. Every hive under their control was signaled. Every rebel cell was warned. The black line fractured into ghost groups, spreading out, going dark, adapting. Earth deployed its own sleeper fleets from hidden orbital vaults long forgotten by politicians. But they weren't just preparing to defend. They were preparing to find the heart of Project Eclipse and kill it before it grew. Because whatever it wasn't done. The next disappearance confirmed that. This time it was a Council stronghold, high-orbit fortress, 5 million personnel, hundreds of ships, all wiped out. The Council broadcast nothing. No denials, no propaganda. Only silence. They were afraid, too. The journey to Yoran 5 took 6 days through black space, and Gravehold wasn't alone. A flotilla followed, patched ships, old war relics, even converted swarm biocruisers. Behind them, a dozen allied rebel systems sent scouts and data arrays, all feeding one single purpose: understanding the threat. When they arrived, the 4th moon was already gone. Not destroyed, missing. like someone had pulled it out of reality. But something remained. A rift. A dark, swirling wound in space, pulsing with silent madness. Ships near it lost engine control. AI systems looped. Cameras failed to record its edges. Foster couldn't explain it. It's not just a rift, it's a door. To where? Colton asked. Foster didn't answer. Reese didn't wait. They launched a probe. It disappeared in 0.3 seconds. Data came back, encrypted, corrupted, but not before a single frame broke through. Not of another dimension. Not of a weapon, but of a being. Colossal. Humanoid in shape, but writhing with tendrils. No eyes, no mouth. Just an endless, spiraling void where a head should be. A single word appeared in the data before collapse. Oblivion. Marcus whispered, "That's not a name. That's a warning." Reese stared into the rift. "They tried to bury it," he said, "and now they've unleashed it to kill us." "Can it be killed?" Colton asked. Reese didn't answer, but inside, he knew this wasn't something they could shoot or bomb or burn. This was something that had to be contained, sealed again before it consumed the galaxy. And that would require a sacrifice none of them were ready for. Back on Earth, chaos erupted. Cities locked down, riots surged, the government split, half siding with the Deathworlders, the other screaming for surrender. Swarm units had to be deployed, not to conquer, but to protect humans from themselves. On the third day, the rift expanded. Systems began flickering. Stars dimmed. Something was feeding. Reese returned to the swarm cradle. He entered alone. "I know you can hear me," he said to the swarm intelligence, now semi-conscious under Foster's rewired code. The air shimmered. A single phrase echoed, "Feeder wakes. All burn." Reese growled, "Not if we burn it first." He exited with a single plan. Total collapse. They wouldn't fight Oblivion. They would bury it, using the swarm itself. Not as a weapon, as a coffin. They would drive every swarm creature, every hive, every ounce of living biotech into that rift. Detonate the cradle. Seal the door with the only thing the galaxy ever feared. Itself. And the Deathworlders would lead the charge. One last war. One last reckoning. They called it the Last Drive. A name spoken in hushed tones across war rooms, rebel bunkers, and pirate fortresses. Every corner of the galaxy, friend, foe, or fugitive, heard the signal. The Deathworlders were moving, not to conquer, not to hold territory, but to throw themselves into the mouth of something older than death. The plan was madness. Drive the entire swarm, every single hive, every bioship, into the Oblivion rift. Collapse it with raw force, swarm cores detonated in unison. Seal the gate, not with science, not with diplomacy, but with the sacrifice of the monsters they'd once been so terrified of. And Earth would lead the charge. Reese stood before the central command table on Gravehold, surrounded by the last Deathworlder unit. Just 7 men now. Time had carved them down, stripped them of everything but grit, fire, and spite. "Most of you won't come back," he said. "You already knew that." Marcus nodded. "We didn't sign up for medals?" Colton smirked. "Didn't sign up for anything, remember?" A few chuckles passed through the silence. It wasn't fearlessness. It was acceptance. Reese continued. "The swarm's ready. Cradles linked to the rift path. Foster's core. I will maintain the sync long enough for the swarm to enter fully." He tapped the table, and a hologram flickered into place. showing hundreds of thousands of swarm ships moving in formation, like a single leviathan made of nightmare. After the last ship breaches the rift, we detonate every core node. It'll either close the rift or annihilate everything inside. And if it doesn't? Marcus asked. Rhys didn't blink. Then we make sure it doesn't leave. The black line assembled one final time at the edge of known space. Rebels, warlords, even some ex-council species, too afraid of what they'd unleashed to remain enemies. Their fleet filled the dark like angry embers in a dying fire. Rhys addressed them from a pulpit of steel aboard Gravehold. You feared us, he began, voice carried across every frequency. You called us savages, freaks, monsters. He paused. You were right. Silence. But now you need monsters. You need the thing the galaxy buried to bury something worse. We're not here to beg for your trust. We're not here to ask permission. We're here to do what no one else will. He stepped back. Join us or get out of our way. There was no applause, just nods. Quiet, final nods. The kind men give before stepping into hell. The approach to the rift was chaos. As the swarm moved, Oblivion fought back. Reality twisted. Ships vanished mid-formation. Some pilots began screaming over comms before vaporizing into light. A Deathworlder cruiser began folding in on itself, not physically, but dimensionally, shrinking into a black thread until it snapped from existence. Still, they pressed on. The first wave of swarm hives entered the rift. Nothing came back. Then the second. By the third wave, the rift began to shake, like it was resisting, like it knew. And then it screamed, not sound, not frequency. A thought, an echo. Rhys felt it in his bones. Feeder denied. You cannot seal me. You are mine. Foster's ichor sputtered, flickered, held firm. Ignore it. It's trying to fragment neural sync. Stay linked. Rhys gritted his teeth. Send in the next block. Wave after wave, the swarm surged into the rift. Bioships and hive minds, guided by nothing but will and command. They dove into the unknown, into a death that had no name, no guarantee, no salvation. And it worked. The rift began to shrink. But then Oblivion struck back. The Black Line's rear guard was ripped apart in seconds. A gravitational pulse shattered half a fleet, reducing metal to molten glass. Rebel screamers, small, fast ships, disintegrated mid-evade. Gravehold's hull groaned as tendrils of black energy lashed across it. Foster's voice replied, strained. We're down to 20% sync. That's the last safe batch. After that, we can't pull the swarm out. It's all in. Rhys turned to his crew. This is it. No orders, no speeches, just action. They entered the rift. Inside Oblivion, nothing made sense. Time bled, space curled, ships flew beside their own echoes, dead men screamed from the past. Rhys saw his own death 1,000 times in a second. Colton clutched his head, blood pouring from his eyes. Marcus screamed, Reality's breaking. But Foster's voice cut through it like a blade. Push forward. Core detonation needs to be manual from the center. They reached the cradle's final hub, a core grown out of swarm matter and pure defiance. Every Deathworlder dropped from their ship into a sea of nightmares, creatures that didn't obey physics, concepts that tore sanity apart. But they fought, not like soldiers, like demons. Rhys drove a blade into something that wasn't flesh but memory. Colton blew apart a creature made of starlight and regret. Marcus hacked the final terminal while burning alive from the inside. And Rhys? Rhys activated the failsafe. The cradle surged. Every swarm node across the galaxy lit up. Every hive heart beat one last time. Then everything inside the rift exploded. Silence. Endless, eternal silence. Rhys woke up somewhere dark. He wasn't breathing. He wasn't anything. Then a spark. A voice. Foster's voice. "You made it." "Did we win?" Rhys asked. "No," Foster said, "but we survived." Rhys opened his eyes. He was inside a medical pod. Earth. 2 years had passed. Marcus and Colton were alive, barely. Most of the Deathworlders were gone. Gravehold was destroyed. The rift, sealed. Oblivion, trapped, for now. And the galaxy, forever changed. They didn't get statues. They didn't get speeches. But the name Deathworlder no longer meant fear. It meant salvation. The monsters had saved the world. 2 years after the last drive, Earth was no longer the same planet. The skies were clearer, quieter, devoid of swarm fleets, council satellites, or black-line patrols. But peace wasn't silence. It was tension, waiting in every alley, every border, every memory. The world had survived Oblivion, but it hadn't walked away clean. Rhys stood on the scorched balcony of what used to be Fort Tempest, now a reconstruction zone filled with engineers, veterans, and displaced survivors. The snow blew across the field like ghosts, thin and cold. 2 years in cryo, and he still wasn't used to breathing Earth's air again. It smelled smaller. Behind him, Colton sat on a steel crate, smoking the same brand he used to ration during the Europa campaign. His left arm was gone, replaced with a jagged synthetic that still sparked when it got too cold. His face was lined now, not with age, but with the weight of being one of the few who came back. "Think they'll ever stop watching us?" he asked. "They're not watching," Rhys said. "They're waiting." "For what?" "For us to die." Colton gave a half smile. "We always disappoint, don't we?" Down below, construction crews were rebuilding a section of the old barracks. But they weren't using earth steel. It was biofused, leftover swarm material, harvested from what remained after the cradle's detonation. Even now, humanity was learning from the things it once feared. "Marcus is up," Colton added quietly. "Docs say he's walking again, spines holding." Rhys nodded, but didn't turn. There wasn't much joy in news like that anymore, just grim relief. Most of the Deathworlders were gone, not just killed, erased. The rift didn't claim lives the way bombs did. It twisted time, erased timelines. Some men never came back because they never existed again. Families waited for soldiers who'd been rewritten out of history. Rhys sometimes woke up remembering names no one else did. That was the real price, not death, disappearance. The world moved on without them, because it had to. The council had collapsed, of course. With the swarm disarmed and the Oblivion threat exposed, every species turned inward, trying to piece together what they'd allowed to happen. Some splintered, some vanished. Others looked to Earth not with hatred, but with cautious reverence. The humans who had once been labeled unpredictable, violent, and savage were now the reason the stars still burned. And that terrified everyone. Earth didn't join the new Galactic Union. It didn't ask. It didn't want to. The Black Line disbanded, at least officially, though rumors swirled of a new group operating in the fringe systems, silent, efficient, unforgiving. The name Deathworlder became myth, spoken in the same breath as saviors and destroyers, a warning, a legend, a ghost story. Rhys kept quiet. He didn't want to be a hero. He didn't even want to be remembered. But the galaxy wouldn't let go. 3 months after Marcus recovered, a transmission came through, Old encryption. Black line signature. One Reese hadn't seen since the gathering. He opened it alone. A woman's voice, clear and hard-edged, crackled over the feed. "You don't know me. My name's Kara Vey. I was Council Intelligence before everything fell apart. I have something you need to see." Reese didn't respond. The voice continued. "We thought Oblivion was contained. It's not." A data package followed. Coordinates, spectral readings, a fragment of something breathing just past the sealed rift's edge. Colton found him later, staring at the frozen lake near the base. "You're thinking about going, aren't you?" Colton asked. "I never stopped. We sealed it, Reese. You closed that thing." Reese turned slowly. We stalled it. We fed it silence. But now it's hungry again." Colton flicked his cigarette into the snow. "So what? We dive back in? Just us?" "No," Reese said. "This time we teach someone else." Colton raised a brow. "You serious?" Reese nodded. "We build something better. Not an army, not a rebellion, a wall. Something that can hold." He looked up at the stars, now eerily calm. "They'll come back, Colton. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not for decades. But they'll come. And when they do, we'll be waiting," Colton said. Over the next year, Reese traveled. Quietly. He met with engineers who had worked on the original Cradle sync drives, visited the Torellan ruins, and found young rebels rebuilding villages. He recruited not from elite corps or trained soldiers, but from orphans, survivors, the unwanted. People with nothing to lose and no delusions of glory. He didn't give them uniforms, he didn't give them flags, he gave them the truth that the galaxy wasn't safe, that peace was an illusion, and that monsters like them were still needed, not to destroy but to stand between existence and whatever came next. They called themselves the Pale Ward. They didn't broadcast their presence. They didn't march in parades. They built outposts in dead sectors, stations where physics still bent slightly wrong, places where the silence still screamed. And Reese watched over them year after year, never aging, never fading, as if the rift had touched something deeper in him, changed him in ways even Foster couldn't explain. Marcus once joked that Reese wasn't human anymore. Maybe he was right. But Reese didn't care. He had one mission left. When the stars went dark again, to make sure something answered. 20 years passed. Earth prospered. Aliens returned, trading, building embassies, offering apologies in polished silver and cautious words. Humanity smiled politely, but never let go of its monsters. Reese stood alone on a forgotten moon, watching the stars through a broken visor. A quiet beep echoed in his earpiece. Foster's last backup flickered to life. "It's time," the AI said. A new rift had opened, smaller, sharper, but familiar. Reese cracked his knuckles. "Time to go back to work.